Captain Lee Do-yun stared at the strange message that filled his ship's main screen. The words glowed with an eerie blue light that seemed to pulse with each syllable. Mortals, you have entered divine space. Kneel before the ethereal council. Do-hyun scratched his chin and looked around the bridge of the exploration ship Sunrise. His crew was equally confused. Dr. Park Yoon-ji, the ship's scientist, was already running scans on the transmission. Commander Kim Tae-won stood ready at the weapons station, though he looked more curious than worried. "Captain," said Engineer Choi Murray from her post, "I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead. Whatever sent that message has serious power." The Sunrise had been exploring the outer edge of known space for 3 months. They were looking for new worlds and maybe friendly aliens to trade with. Earth's government wanted to expand humanity's reach among the stars. So far, they had found empty planets and dead rocks. This was their first sign of intelligent life. Divine space? Do-yun repeated the words slowly. That's a new one. Suddenly, the ship shuddered. Warning lights flashed red across the bridge. Mirai's hands flew over her controls, but nothing responded. "We're caught in some kind of energy field," she reported. "All systems are locked down. I can't even turn on the coffee maker." Before anyone could respond, the main screen changed. The blue glow faded, replaced by 3 floating figures that looked like they were made of pure light. They had vaguely human shapes, but seemed to shift and flow like living energy. When they spoke, their voices echoed strangely. "Primitive beings," said the center figure. "You stand before the high ethereal Zephon and the divine council. We are the gods of this galaxy. All life serves us." Dr. Park Yoon-ji stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. "Greetings. I'm Dr. Park Yoon-ji of the human vessel Sunrise. We come in peace and seek friendship with other intelligent species." The 3 figures seemed to ripple with what might have been amusement. "Friendship?" Zephon's voice carried a cold laugh. "Mortals do not befriend gods. They worship and obey." The screen split to show views of other worlds. Do-hyun watched in growing horror as reptilian creatures with green scales worked in vast mines, their heads bowed in submission. Insect-like beings with 4 arms built enormous temples under the watchful gaze of floating energy beings. Both species moved with the slow, defeated pace of slaves. "The Vorth and Klixin have learned their place," Zephon continued. "They know that gods must be served without question. Their worlds provide us with resources, and in return, we protect them from the darkness of space." Commander Kim Tae-won clenched his fists. "That's not protection. That's slavery." The ethereals seemed to notice him for the first time. "Ah, this one has spirit. We sense resistance in your minds, humans. This is unusual. Most species accept our divine nature immediately." Dr. Park Yoon-ji was quietly running her medical scanners on the transmission signal. Her eyebrows rose as she read the results. She caught Do-yun's eye and shook her head slightly. Something was wrong with the ethereal's story. "You will bring your ship to the holy world of Corva Prime," Zephon commanded. "There you will kneel before our physical forms and accept your place in our divine order. You have 7 of your Earth days to comply." "And if we refuse?" Do-hyun asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then you will share the fate of the last species that defied us. Their worlds are now dust, and their people exist only in our memory banks as a warning to others." The transmission ended. The energy field holding the Sunrise slowly released its grip. Mirai immediately began checking all systems while the others gathered around the captain's chair. "Those readings were very strange," Dr. Park Yoon-ji whispered. "Their energy signatures don't match anything we know about natural life forms. There's something artificial about them." "Artificial how?" Do-hyun asked. "I'm not sure yet. But they're not pure energy beings like they appear. There's technology involved, lots of it. Engineer Choi Mirai looked up from her console. Captain, I managed to record their transmission frequency. If I can boost our sensors, I might be able to learn more about how they work. Commander Kim Tae-won was studying the tactical data. Those slave worlds we saw, there were billions of beings down there. If these ethereals really are that powerful, we can't fight them directly. Maybe we don't need to fight them, Do-hyun said slowly. Maybe we just need to show everyone else that gods can bleed. Dr. Park Yoonji smiled grimly. In my experience, anything that claims to be a god usually isn't. Real gods don't need to threaten people into believing. The next few hours were busy. The crew worked together to gather information about the Corvan Empire. They discovered that the ethereals controlled 12 star systems with hundreds of worlds. Every planet was populated by different alien species, all working to serve their supposed gods. But as they dug deeper, they found cracks in the perfect divine order. Some transmissions showed Vorth and Klixen working slower than they should. Others revealed small acts of defiance quickly punished by the ethereals. Most interesting of all, they found evidence that the Empire had once been much larger. Look at this, Mirai said, pointing to a star chart. 20 years ago, they controlled twice as many systems. Something happened to make them lose half their territory. Rebellion? Kim Tae-won suggested. Or maybe their God Act isn't as convincing as they think, Dr. Park Yoonji added. As the deadline approached, Do-hyun called his crew together. We have a choice. We can run back to Earth and warn them about the ethereals. We can surrender and become slaves like the others. Or we can stay and see if these gods are as divine as they claim. The vote was unanimous. They would stay. When Zephon's image appeared on the screen again exactly 7 days later, he found Captain Lee Do-hyun standing straight and proud. Have you come to accept your divine fate, human? Do-hyun smiled. I've got a better idea. Why don't you prove you're actually gods? For the first time, the ethereal seemed surprised. What? You heard me. Do something godlike. Create a star, bring back the dead, make time flow backward, show us a real miracle. The energy being's form flickered with what looked like anger. We do not need to prove anything to mortals. Then you're not gods, Do-hyun said simply. You're just bullies with fancy technology, and humans have been dealing with bullies for thousands of years. The transmission ended abruptly. Within minutes, dozens of ethereal ships appeared around. The sunrise, their weapons charging with deadly energy. The war between gods and mortals was about to begin. The ethereal ships surrounded the sunrise like angry wasps around a disturbed hive. Captain Lee Do-hyun watched them on his screen, counting at least 30 vessels that looked like they were made of the same flowing energy as their crews. But Engineer Choi Mirai had been busy during the past week, and she had news. Captain, those ships aren't energy constructs, she reported. They're solid matter covered in some kind of energy field. I can see metal underneath the glow. Dr. Park Yoonji added her own findings. I've been studying their biological readings more carefully. The ethereals show signs of having once been physical beings. Their energy patterns match brain waves, just amplified and projected somehow. Before Do-hyun could respond, a new transmission came through. This time it wasn't from the glowing forms they had seen before. Instead, a reptilian face appeared on the screen. The creature had green scales, yellow eyes, and looked terrified. Human ship, the being whispered. I am Kesh of the Vorth. I work on the engineering decks of the holy vessels. Do not trust the ethereals. They are not what they claim. The transmission cut out immediately, but it was enough. Commander Kim Tae-won leaned forward. Did we just get contacted by one of their slaves? Looks like it, Do-hyun replied. And it sounds like we're not the only ones who doubt the God story. Lieutenant Yoon-ji Woo, who handled communications, suddenly spoke up. Captain, I'm picking up encrypted transmissions between the ethereal ships. If I can break their code... She worked furiously at her station for several minutes. The bridge was quiet, except for the hum of computers and the distant rumble of the ship's engines. Finally, Jiwoo smiled. "Got it. Captain, you need to hear this." The speakers crackled, then filled with voices that sounded strangely normal, despite the alien words that were automatically translated. "The humans show no fear of our divine presence," said one voice. "Perhaps we should increase the power of our projection fields," suggested another. "No, fool. If we use too much power, the slaves will notice the drain on the temple reactors. Remember what happened on Vorth Prime when the main projector failed? The humans are different from other species. Their minds resist our influence. Techniques." High ethereal Zephon's voice cut through the chatter. "Silence! We are gods, and gods do not worry about mortal resistance. Prepare the punishment beams. We will make an example of these humans." The transmission ended. Dr. Park Yoonji stared at the speaker. Did they just admit their divine forms are projections? And that they use some kind of mind control on other species, added Commander Kim Tae-won. Engineer Choi Mi-rae was already working on a solution. If their god forms are just projections, then there must be a source, some kind of technology creating the illusion. Captain Do-yun made a decision. "Mi-rae, can you track where those projections are coming from? Give me a few minutes." Her fingers flew over the controls. "There. The largest ship is generating projection fields for all the others. It's like a giant hologram system, but much more advanced. Can you disrupt it?" Mi-rae grinned. "I've been working on that all week. Human computers don't think like alien computers. We might be able to cause some technical difficulties." Before she could act, another secret transmission reached them. This time it was the insect-like being they had seen working on the temple worlds. The creature had 4 arms and large compound eyes that reflected the light. "I am Queen Thyra of the Clixon," the being said quickly. "We have watched your defiance with great interest. For generations, we have served the ethereals without question. But some of us have begun to wonder, if they are truly gods, why do they need so many machines?" This transmission also cut out fast, but the message was clear. The cracks in the ethereal empire were bigger than anyone had realized. Dr. Park Yoonji was studying her readings again. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy sources on several nearby planets. They're all connected to what look like transmission stations." "The temples," Do-hyun realized. "Those buildings we saw the slaves constructing. They're not temples at all. They're control stations," Commander Kim Tae-won finished. "Broadcasting the god illusion across the galaxy." Lieutenant Yoon Ji-woo intercepted another communication. "Captain, the ethereal ships are powering up their weapons, but they're also sending signals to the nearest temple world. I think they're calling for backup." Engineer Choi Mi-rae looked up from her console. "Sir, I'm ready to try disrupting their projection system. But we'll only get one shot. After that, they'll know what we're doing." Do-yun nodded. "Do it." Mi-rae's virus shot through space faster than light, carried by the same communication systems the ethereals use to coordinate their ships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the energy fields around the alien vessels began to flicker. Suddenly, the godlike forms of the ethereals wavered and disappeared. In their place stood ordinary aliens wearing technological suits that generated the energy projections. They looked similar to humans, but with pale blue skin and larger eyes. Most importantly, they looked shocked and afraid. Impossible. High ethereal Zephon's voice had lost its godly echo. Now he just sounded like a frightened person. "The divine illusion cannot be broken." "Guess what?" Captain Do-yun said into his communicator. "It just was." The effect rippled outward from the ethereal fleet. On the temple worlds, the giant projection systems flickered and failed. For the first time in centuries, the Vorth and Clixon saw their gods as they really were, ordinary beings using advanced technology to maintain an illusion of divinity. The response was immediate. Work stopped on every temple world. Slaves, looked up at the sky and realized they had been living a lie. Some began to cheer. Others stood in stunned silence. A few began to march toward the control stations that had kept them enslaved. High Ethereal Zephon's face appeared on the Sunrise's screen again, but now he looked desperate instead of divine. "You don't understand what you've done. We brought order to chaos. We gave these species purpose. You gave them slavery," Dr. Park Yunji replied firmly. "And you lied to them about what you were." "We are still gods," Zephon insisted. "Our technology makes us gods," Engineer Choi Mirai laughed. "My grandmother always said that if you need a machine to be something, you're probably not that thing." On the screen, they could see Zephon arguing with other ethereals. Some wanted to attack immediately. Others suggested retreat. The perfect unity of the God Act was falling apart. Commander Kim Taewon was monitoring the tactical situation. "Captain, some of their ships are breaking formation. I think they're having command problems." "The slaves on the temple worlds are fighting back," Lieutenant Yoon Ji-woo reported. "I'm getting distress calls from ethereal stations across the galaxy." Dr. Park Yoon-ji smiled grimly. "Once people stop believing in fake gods, it's hard to make them start again." But High Ethereal Zephon wasn't finished. His image filled the screen one more time, and now his face showed pure hatred. "If we cannot rule as gods," he snarled, "then we will rule through fear. All ships target the human vessel. Destroy them completely." The ethereal weapons began to charge with deadly energy. But as the first shots fired, something unexpected happened. Several of the enemy ships turned their guns on each other instead. "This is Kesh of the Vorth," came a transmission from one of the attacking ships. "We have taken control of this vessel. The age of false gods is over." The battle for the galaxy's freedom had begun. The space battle around the Sunrise was unlike anything Captain Lee Do-yeon had ever seen. Ethereal ships fired on each other while former slaves took control of the vessels they had been forced to maintain. Energy beams lit up the darkness as the fake gods fought desperately to maintain their crumbling empire. "Captain," reported Commander Kim Taewon, 3 more ethereal ships have been captured by their own crews. The Vorth and Klixen are really good at this rebellion thing." Dr. Park Yoon-ji was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "The uprising is spreading faster than we expected. Reports are coming in from 8 different star systems. The slaves are taking over the temple control stations." On the main screen, they watched as Queen Thyra's insect-like form appeared. She was standing in what looked like the bridge of an ethereal command ship, her 4 arms working the alien controls with surprising skill. "Human friends," she said, "we have learned much from your example. The Klixen were engineers before the ethereals enslaved us. We built many of their machines. Now we use that knowledge against them." Another transmission came from Kesh, the Vorth engineer who had first contacted them. He was covered in what looked like golden oil, and his green scales gleamed under the raw ship's lights. "The false gods kept us in the engine rooms," he explained. "They thought we were too stupid to understand their technology. They were wrong." Engineer Choi Mirai was fascinated by the technical aspects of the rebellion. "Captain, these aliens are incredible. They've been secretly studying ethereal technology for generations, waiting for a chance like this." The battle was turning in favor of the rebels, but High Ethereal Zephon wasn't giving up easily. His remaining ships regrouped around a massive vessel that looked like a floating city made of energy and metal. "Attention, all vessels," his voice echoed across the communication channels. "Return to your stations immediately. The divine order must be maintained." But instead of obeying, more ships joined the rebellion. The ethereals had made a critical mistake. They had relied on fear and illusion for so long that they had forgotten how to actually lead. Dr. Bae Hyunwoo, the ship's historian, had been quietly studying ancient transmissions from the area. Now he called everyone to the archaeology station. "I've found something important," he said, pointing to his screen. "These readings are from the original Corvin homeworld. It was destroyed thousands of years ago, but the ruins are still there. The screen showed images of ancient stone buildings and metal artifacts. But what caught everyone's attention were the statues. They showed the same pale blue aliens they had seen when the ethereal projections failed. The ethereals are Corvins, Dr. Bay continued, but they weren't always energy beings. These ruins show a civilization that was obsessed with avoiding death. They built machines to transfer their consciousness into artificial bodies. So they were never gods, Dr. Park Yoonji said. They were just people who were afraid to die. Captain Do-Yun studied the images. How long ago did this happen? At least 2,000 years. Maybe more. Dr. Bay pulled up more data. From what I can tell, the original Corvins destroyed their own world in the process of becoming immortal. Then they decided that since they had conquered death, they must be gods. The revelation spread quickly through the rebel fleet. Queen Thyra's voice came over the communicators again. "We have accessed the ethereal database," she announced. "The human archaeologist speaks truth. The gods are nothing but ancient cowards who feared their own mortality." High Ethereal Zephon's response was filled with rage. "Lies! We transcended mortal flesh! We became divine!" "You became machines," Commander Kim Tae-won replied bluntly. "Fancy machines, but still just machines. The psychological effect on the ethereals was devastating. Several more ships surrendered as their crews realized they had been serving beings who were no more divine than anyone else. The fake gods began arguing among themselves, their unity completely shattered. But the rebels faced a new problem. As more systems joined the uprising, the ethereals became increasingly desperate. Reports came in of entire planets being attacked when their populations refused to kneel. "They're destroying their own empire rather than lose it," Dr. Park Yoonji observed sadly. Queen Thyra's transmission showed the urgency of the situation. "The ethereals are retreating to their core worlds, but they are taking revenge on any planet that defies them. We must act quickly." Engineer Choi Mireille had been working on a new project during the battle. "Captain, I think I can modify our weapons to disrupt ethereal energy matrices. If these fake gods are really just uploaded minds in artificial bodies, we might be able to force them back into physical form." "Is that possible?" Do-Yun asked. "Human technology works differently than alien tech," she explained. "Our computers think in binary code, on or off, yes or no. Ethereal systems seem to work with energy patterns. If I can create the right frequency..." Dr. Park Yoonji was excited by the possibility. "If we can force them to become solid again, they'll lose their apparent immortality. That might be enough to convince the remaining slave worlds to rebel." The plan required cooperation from all the rebel ships. Queen Thera and Kesh worked with Mirai to modify weapons systems across the fleet. The Clixen proved especially useful. Their natural ability to work with energy systems made them excellent engineers. As they prepared for the assault on the ethereal core worlds, more allies joined them. The bird-like Scythe from the outer systems brought their fast scout ships. The crystalline Nexari contributed their powerful shields. Each species had something to offer the growing rebellion. "This is incredible," Dr. Park Yoonji said as she watched the diverse fleet form up around the sunrise. "These species are working together as equals. The ethereals kept them separated for centuries." High Ethereal Zephon made one last attempt to maintain control. His image appeared on screens throughout the rebel fleet, but now he looked tired and desperate. "You cannot destroy us," he warned. "We have ruled this galaxy for 2,000 years. We know secrets you cannot imagine." Captain Do-Hyun stepped forward. "Maybe you do. But here's the thing about secrets. They only have power if people believe them. And nobody believes you anymore." The fake god's image flickered and disappeared. When it returned, Zephon looked different, older, more fragile. The energy that had made him seem divine was fading. "You have doomed this galaxy," he said, quietly. "Without us, These species will destroy each other. We brought peace through order. You brought peace through slavery, Queen Thyra corrected him. We will find our own way to live together. Kesh added his voice to the conversation. The Vorth chose to work with the Klixen during this rebellion. We chose to trust the humans. Choice is what you never gave us. As the rebel fleet moved toward the ethereal core worlds, Dr. Bae Hyunwoo made another discovery in the ancient records. Captain, I found something else. The Korvans weren't the first species the ethereals enslaved. They conquered their own planet first, enslaving other Korvans who refused to upload their minds. They've been tyrants from the very beginning, Dr. Park Yoonji realized. The final battle was approaching. The fake gods had retreated to their ultimate stronghold, a massive artificial world that served as both fortress and temple. It was here that the truth about the ethereals would finally be revealed, and the galaxy would learn whether gods could truly die. The Liberation Fleet pressed forward, carrying the hopes of 1 billion enslaved beings toward their final confrontation with the false deities who had ruled through fear and lies for far too long. The artificial world of Corva Prime hung in space like a dark jewel, surrounded by the light of dying stars. Admiral Jo Seung-hwan stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Thunder, watching the massive structure through the view screen. The reinforcement fleet from Earth had arrived just in time for the final battle. It's bigger than I expected, Admiral Jo said to Captain Lee Do-hyun, who had come aboard the flagship for the strategy meeting. How many ethereals are hiding in there? Our best guess is about 50,000, Do-hyun replied, but they're desperate. Now, intelligence reports suggest they're preparing to destroy the entire system rather than surrender. Around them, the Liberation Fleet had grown to over 300 ships. Vorth engineering vessels worked alongside Klixen fighters and human battleships. The bird-like Scythe provided reconnaissance, while the crystalline Nexari powered massive shield generators. It was the largest cooperative military force the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Park Yoonji entered the briefing room carrying a datapad full of scientific readings. Admiral, we've completed our analysis of the artificial world. It's not just a fortress, it's a giant computer. The entire planet is one massive processing system. Professor Lim Chanwoo, Earth's leading expert on energy physics, looked up from his calculations. The power requirements are incredible. They're drawing energy from the system's star to maintain their artificial bodies, Engineer Choi Mireille added, her technical assessment. If we can disrupt their power source, the ethereals will be forced back into solid form. But the energy levels involved, it's like trying to turn off a sun. In the fighter bay, Sergeant Onari was preparing her special operations team for ground assault. The team included humans, Vorth, Klixen, and volunteers from other freed species. They had trained together during the journey to Corva Prime, learning to work as a unit. Remember, Sergeant O told her mixed-species squad, the ethereals have been gods for so long that they've forgotten how to fight as mortals. That's our advantage. Kesh, the Vorth engineer who had first contacted the humans, was part of the ground team. His knowledge of ethereal technology would be crucial for the mission. The power core will be deep inside the artificial world, he explained. But I know the maintenance tunnels. We can reach it. Queen Thyra had volunteered to lead the Klixen forces in a separate assault on the communication arrays. If we can cut off their ability to coordinate, she said, the ethereals will panic. They have ruled through perfect control for too long. The battle began with a massive bombardment from the Liberation Fleet. But Corva Prime's defenses were unlike anything they had faced before. Energy shields deflected their weapons while automated defense platforms returned fire with devastating accuracy. The shields are adapting to our weapons, reported Commander Kim Tae-won from the Sunrise. Every time we find a frequency that works, they adjust to block it. Admiral Jo Seung-hwan studied the tactical display. Then we'll have to get creative. Professor Lim, is your anti-energy weapon ready? Professor Lim nodded nervously. It's untested, but the theory is sound. If I can create a resonance cascade in their power matrix, do it. The professor's device fired a strange pulse that seemed to bend space itself. For a moment, nothing happened. Then sections of Corva Prime's shields began to flicker and fail. "It's working!" Engineer Choi Mirai shouted. "The cascade is spreading through their power grid." High Ethereal Zephon's image appeared on every screen in the Liberation Fleet. But now he looked more solid than before, his energy form crackling with instability. "You dare attack the sacred world?" he raged. "We will show you the true power of gods!" Corva Prime began to transform. Massive weapons emerged from its surface, each one larger than a battleship. Energy beams lanced out toward the Liberation Fleet, destroying several ships in the first volley. But the freed species fought back with courage, born of desperation. Vorth engineering ships rammed into the weapons platforms, while Clixon fighters swarmed the defense systems. Human battleships provided covering fire as transport ships raced toward the artificial world's surface. Sergeant O'Nari's team landed in the middle of a massive city built inside Corva Prime. The buildings were made of the same flowing energy, as the ethereals themselves, constantly shifting and changing shape. It was like fighting inside a living computer. "Stay together," Sergeant O ordered as energy constructs attacked them. "Remember, they're just holograms with force fields. Our weapons can hurt them." The team fought their way through streets that rearranged themselves to block their path. Kesh guided them toward the power core, using maintenance passages that the ethereals had forgotten existed. Meanwhile, Queen Thyra led her forces against the communication arrays. The Clixon had always been good at working with complex technology, and they turned that skill toward sabotage. One by one, the arrays fell silent. "The ethereals are losing coordination," reported Lieutenant Yoon Ji-woo from the Sunrise. "Their formations are breaking apart." Dr. Park Yoonji was monitoring the biological readings from Corva Prime. "The disruption field is working. I'm detecting solid matter where there should only be energy. Some of the ethereals are being forced back into physical bodies." The effect was spreading throughout the artificial world. Ethereals who had existed as pure energy for centuries suddenly found themselves trapped in solid flesh again. Many panicked, unused to the limitations of physical form. Sergeant O's team reached the power core just as the facility's defenses realized what they were doing. Energy barriers slammed down around them while security constructs moved to attack. "Cover me!" Sergeant O shouted as she and Kesh worked to plant explosive charges on the massive energy conduits. 2 minutes, and this whole place goes dark. But High Ethereal Zephon had realized the threat. His form appeared in the power core chamber, more solid than anyone had ever seen him before. He looked almost human, except for his pale blue skin and the desperate madness in his eyes. "You will not destroy our immortality," he snarled, raising his hands to blast them with energy. Kesh stepped forward, his scales gleaming under the artificial lights. "You were never immortal. You were just hiding from death." The Vorth engineer fired his weapon directly at Zephon. The energy blast struck the false god in the chest, and for the first time in 2,000 years, an ethereal screamed in pain. "Impossible!" Zephon gasped, looking at the wound on his suddenly solid body. "We are beyond such mortal concerns." "No," said Sergeant O'Nari as she activated the charges. "You're just people who forgot what it means to be alive." The explosion tore through Corva Prime's power core. Energy cascaded through the artificial world systems, shutting down the massive computer that had maintained the ethereal illusion for millennia. Across the galaxy, the remaining temple worlds fell silent. The last of the projection systems died, revealing the ethereals as they truly were, frightened beings clinging to power through lies and technology. In the space around Corva Prime, the Liberation Fleet watched as the artificial world began to break apart. Escape pods launched from the surface as the ethereals abandoned their collapsing fortress. "Admiral," reported Commander Kim Taewon, "we're receiving surrender signals from the surviving ethereal ships." Admiral Jo Seong-wan nodded grimly. Accept their surrenders, but they'll answer for what they've done to this galaxy. As the artificial world died in fire and lightning, Dr. Park Yoon-ji made one final observation. The energy readings are returning to normal across all the freed worlds. The age of false gods is over, but the real work was just beginning. With the ethereal empire destroyed, billions of beings across the galaxy would need to learn how to live as free people again. The humans and their allies had won the war, but now they faced the harder challenge of building a lasting peace. 3 months after the fall of Corva Prime, Captain Lee Do-hyun stood in the Great Assembly Hall of New Harmony Station. The massive space station had been built by cooperative effort between humans, Vorth, Klixen, and a dozen other freed species. It served as the meeting place for the new Galactic Council. Unlike the old ethereal empire, this council had no gods or masters. Every species had an equal voice in governing their shared galaxy. It was messy, noisy, and sometimes chaotic. Exactly what democracy should be. The Scythe delegation has a proposal about trade routes, announced Queen Thera, who had been elected as the current council president. Her insect-like form moved gracefully as she managed the complex discussions between dozens of different species. Dr. Park Yoon-ji sat in the human delegation, translating between languages and cultures that had been kept apart for centuries. It was challenging work, but she loved seeing former enemies learn to work together. The crystalline Nexari want to share their shield technology, she reported to Admiral Jo Seong-hwan. In exchange, they'd like access to our medical knowledge. Sounds fair, the Admiral replied. What about the Vorth engineering proposal? Kesh, now serving as chief engineer for the Council, presented his plans for rebuilding the devastated worlds. Many planets need new infrastructure, he explained. But this time, we build for freedom, not slavery. The work was enormous. Across the galaxy, former slave worlds were discovering their own cultures again. The ethereals had suppressed individual identity for so long that many species had almost forgotten who they were before the conquest. On the Klixen homeworld, archaeologists worked with human scientists to uncover buried cities. Dr. Bae Hyunwoo led a team that had found incredible art and literature hidden beneath the temple foundations. The Klixen were philosophers and poets before they became slaves, he reported to the council. Their writings about the nature of consciousness are remarkable. Engineer Choi Mirai was working with Vorth technicians to convert the old temple control stations into communication networks. Instead of broadcasting lies about false gods, they now carried messages of cooperation and trade between worlds. It's amazing how much the galaxy changes when people can talk to each other freely, she observed. But not all the news was good. Some former ethereal worlds had descended into chaos when their artificial rulers disappeared. A few species had tried to set up their own empires, claiming they deserved to rule because they had suffered the most under the old system. The Zephyrian Collective is demanding tribute from 3 systems, reported Commander Kim Tae-won during a security briefing. They say it's payment for liberation services. Sergeant Onari and her peacekeeping forces had been busy dealing with such problems. Her mixed species teams worked to prevent new conflicts from starting. We can't stop every disagreement, she admitted, but we can make sure they're settled with words instead of weapons. The most difficult challenge involved the surviving ethereals themselves. High Ethereal Zephon had died in the destruction of Corva Prime, but thousands of others had survived. They were now stuck in solid bodies for the first time in millennia, struggling to understand a galaxy that no longer worshipped them. Some had adapted well, using their ancient knowledge to help rebuild damaged worlds. Others remained bitter and dangerous, plotting to restore their empire. A few had gone completely insane, unable to cope with mortality after believing themselves gods for so long. We can't ignore them, Dr. Park Yoon-ja argued during a council session. They have 2,000 years of experience governing multiple species. That knowledge could be valuable. They also have 2,000 years of experience as tyrants, Queen Thyra pointed out. Many of my people still have nightmares about the divine punishments. The debate continued for hours, as it often did in the new democratic galaxy. But eventually they reached a compromise. Former ethereals who had committed no violent crimes could apply for citizenship in the new order. They would be watched, carefully, but they would have a chance to earn redemption. Professor Lim Chanwu had been studying the ruins of ethereal technology, trying to understand how they had maintained their empire for so long. His discoveries were both fascinating and disturbing. The mind control techniques were incredibly sophisticated, he reported. They didn't just suppress rebellion, they suppressed the very ability to think rebellious thoughts. How did we resist? Asked Lieutenant Yoon Ji-woo, who now served as the Council's communication coordinator. Human brains seem to work differently, Professor Lim explained. Our tendency toward stubborn independence made us immune to their influence. That's why they had never encountered successful resistance before. The revelation helped explain why the liberation had spread so quickly once it started. The ethereal's control methods had created a house of cards, stable as long as everyone believed, but collapsing rapidly once doubt appeared. As the months passed, new challenges emerged. The Spiral Arm Confederation wanted to establish trade agreements. The distant Andromeda signals had turned out to be another galaxy-spanning civilization that was curious about the events in the Milky Way. Pirates operated in the chaos between the old empire's borders, but there were also wonderful surprises. The photonic clouds turned out to be intelligent gas beings who had been hiding from the ethereals for centuries. The deep dwellers emerged from underground cities to share technology that could terraform dead worlds. New species appeared almost weekly as word spread that the galaxy was free. Captain Do-hyun often found himself amazed at how much had changed. The scared exploration ship captain who had first defied the ethereals was now helping to plan expeditions to other galaxies. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had just surrendered, he said to Dr. Park Yoonja as they watched ships from dozens of species dock at New Harmony Station. We'd all be slaves, she replied simply, and the galaxy would still be living in fear of fake gods. The final ceremony came when the last of the old temple worlds was officially freed. Queen Thyra presided over the event, which was broadcast across all liberated systems. Today marks the end of the Age of False Gods, she announced, but it also marks the beginning of something better. The Age of Free Peoples. Kesh spoke for the Vorth. We choose cooperation over domination. Dr. Park Yoonja spoke for humanity. We choose questions over blind faith. Representatives from dozens of species added their own voices to the declaration. Even some reformed ethereals participated, formally renouncing their claims to divinity. As the ceremony ended, fireworks lit up the space around New Harmony Station. But the real celebration was quieter and more profound. The simple knowledge that beings across the galaxy could now choose their own paths. Admiral Jo Seung-hwan stood beside Captain Do-hyun as they watched the festivities. "What's next for humanity?" he asked. Do-hyun smiled, thinking of the exploration ships being built in the station's construction bays. Some would travel to distant galaxies. Others would help newly freed worlds build their civilizations. A few would simply wander among the stars looking for new wonders and new friends. "Same thing we've always done," he said. "We'll explore, we'll ask questions, and we'll refuse to bow down to anyone who claims to be our betters." In the end, that stubborn human refusal to accept easy answers had been enough to free a galaxy. The ethereals had claimed to be gods until humans showed up and asked them to prove it. When they couldn't, their empire of lies had crumbled like sand. The age of false gods was over. The age of free peoples had begun. And somewhere among the stars, new adventures were waiting for those brave enough to seek them.